Welcome to an uplifting dialogue, stories about how the arts powerfully transform life with Susan Brender. This is V for Vitality.
This show has been made possible by the support of Plantronics, an endpoint company celebrating 50 years of innovation. I'm Susan Brender, and this is V for Vitality. In the 1990s, I attended a conference in New York City that had a profound effect on me because of some of the women whom I thought I'd never have a chance to meet, talk to, learn from. And on that day, I really had the great fortune to meet today's guest. And I want to say something before I introduce our audience to this very special person, Gail Blanke. There are times that you wonder why it is that at this time in your life you get to meet somebody who you fall in love with in some respects because of what they have to say. And that day, when I met and heard Gail Blanke give us a real inspirational talk on In Your Wildest Dreams, that was the day that I decided, and this is the truth, I decided that I was going to be a radio personality. And here I am doing V for Vitality, speaking about the subject of vitality, which I want everyone to think about, how to be vital at any stage in your life. And Gail gave me that inspiration to think about when I was going to start producing a program, V for Vitality, and I want to welcome my very special guest, Gail Blanke, to our show. Hello, Gail.
Hello, Susan. I'm so happy to be with you, and it's very touching to hear you say that from that speech, because then I would say back to you, then that must have been the reason I came and gave that speech, so that you would really get in touch with exactly what you wanted to make happen in your life. Because I always love to ask people this question: hey, if absolutely anything were possible, what would you like to make happen in your life? You know, Walt Disney always said, build the castle first, because that's where all the good stuff is, and it's where the vision is. And if you have the castle to look to, whatever that is in your life, then you're going to have the motivation, the inspiration, and the courage to make it happen.
So let's talk about your castle. And were you trying to build a castle to create something that fit that book, fit the theme of the book, In Your Wildest Dreams? Was that why you wrote that, Gail?
Well, it's actually in my wildest dreams, meaning, whoever the reader is, in my wildest dreams. Sort of that idea that I never in my wildest dreams would have expected that. It really does, that whole thought really did emanate from, if absolutely anything were possible, what would you like to make happen? And everything that I do really, and there are 6 steps that go along with that, really relates to how do you make that kind of life happen. And briefly, it's really, you've got to create that vision of what would good look like. And I really invite people to let go of asking the question, how bad could it get, which everybody seems to be rolling around in right now, and instead ask, how good could I make it? Because there's a lot that's outside of our control, it's true. Bad things, wrong things happen, but there's a lot that's within our control as well. So what could that look like? And concentrate on that. And that leads to a number of other steps, which maybe we can talk a little bit about. But the next step is, okay, so if that's what you want to make happen, what are you going to let go of to help make that happen? And that's what gets us into, all the negative assumptions. Yeah, but nothing that good could ever happen to me, and I'm not that good anyway, and I'd probably mess it up, and I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I'm just, it's just not going to happen, all that kind of stuff. So a very powerful step is letting go of anything that would weigh you down, hold you back, make you feel less than who you are, which is really the whole heart and soul of my most current book, which is called Throw Out 50 Things. It's about letting go of that life plaque, as I call it.
let's stop you for a moment because I didn't truly introduce you at the beginning of the show, and I think it's important for our audience to know a little bit about you, and then we're going to continue to have you talk about some of these things that can make a difference in people's lives. So here we go. Gail Blanke is the best-selling author of a new book called Throw Out 50 Things, Clear the Clutter, Find Your Life. And she also has been a guest on all of the top shows, The Today Show, Morning Fox and Friends, Good Day New York, NPR's Tell Me More, and it goes on and on and on. And Miss Blanke has also produced another book called Between Trapezes, Flying into the New Life with the Greatest of Ease, about thriving on change and mastering the art of self-reinvention. And as I told you, she's been a guest on so many shows, but one of the highlights has been, I'm sure, the Oprah Winfrey Show, all the way back at the beginning when she used concepts from her book to help empower the audience members to create the life of their dreams. Miss Blanke's first book, Taking Control of Your Life, The Secrets of Successful Enterprising Women, sold more than 500,000 copies, and then she went on to be on the Martha Stewart Show, on and on. You know, we can talk about you from today till tomorrow, and it just doesn't end, but at least the audience has a sense of who you are. And then I just want to, last but not least, mention, of course, the book In Your Wildest Dreams, or
in my wildest
wildest dreams. Okay, in my wildest dreams. And so before you continue to talk about some of these things, you mentioned something in your conversation at the beginning, and you said, look, there's a lot of issues going on in this world today, and a lot of the issues are economic and social, and people are down. And if you read the newspapers just today, you will be more down than you possibly can when you hear what's going on in the world, and you also hear how people are struggling. How you are just so upbeat, but you know what? So many people are saying, wait a minute, come on. You know, with all that this woman is saying, in my wildest dreams, what could I do? I've tried everything. What's wrong with this picture, Gail?
Well, it's very understandable that a lot of us feel that way because it is hard. You know, in a way, it's kind of supposed to be hard because if it weren't hard, you know, somebody would already have done it. So hard is okay, but we don't want to lose our hope, and we don't want to lose our gutsiness. I think that I was thinking about that wonderful Sarah Blakely who created the Spanx, you know, those great sort of suck-in-your-body stockings
right.
that we all wear. And she's just brilliant. But she just started it with a crazy, wild idea, and now she's got a $150 million business, 50 employees, and 100 different styles for all of us. But she said that what she learned from her dad was really what helped her keep going, because he said to her, don't be afraid to fail. And he would ask his kids growing up, what did you fail at this week? And if they didn't have something to report, he would be disappointed, because that was how you learned. That failure wasn't an outcome. Failure is just not trying. So if you're going to try something, there are going to be times when it's going to be hard and you're going to fail and you come up short. That's part of the deal. You know, speaking of between trapezes, the greatest thing about trapeze artists is that they always say the greatest flyers are the greatest fallers, and that trapeze artists never confuse falling with failing. So, okay, so it's hard, but you know, that's when we sort of let go, and this is where the whole idea of throwing out 50 things, this is when we let go of all those doubts and fears and how it didn't work out the last time having nothing to do with this particular time, and concentrate on what we want to make happen and save our energy, not for talking to ourselves about all the bad stuff, but for reminding ourselves of the good stuff.
Now, let's talk about your life for a moment. Let's go back, because the notion that you can fail, and it's not really failure, is a very positive idea. And some of us are born with a certain kind of mindset. I believe very strongly in that, and we're wired in a certain way. How are you wired, and what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I like Sarah Blakely, I have to always talk about my dad because he raised my brother and me to we were both very athletic. Oh, and I must say that I was raised exactly the way my brother was. It was assumed that I would be as athletic or as anything as my brother. I had no notion growing up that it was somehow different being a girl or anything less than being a boy. And I think that, I must say, I think that athletics played a big part in my life. I was a competitive swimmer, and I missed qualifying for the Olympics by 0.3 of a second in a 100-meter freestyle. I missed. I mean, you could say I failed, but I gave it my best shot, and I learned a tremendous amount along the way. And it was, it's interesting because I didn't feel bad about it. I was disappointed, but I didn't feel bad. I felt great that I had gotten that far. But anyway, I think that if we're lucky, we're brought up with that kind of surroundings of positive, good stuff. But not all of us are that lucky. And so then what do? We might have been brought up in an atmosphere of, fear of failing. And I think that no matter how you're brought up, you can decide. Deciding is a big word in our lives, particularly right now. What are you deciding? You can decide to adopt a different mindset. You really can. Now, it's tricky because you have to get up every morning and say, okay, I no longer believe that anymore. I was on a radio show not long ago, Susan, where everybody was calling in and talking about what they were going to let go of. And this guy said, okay, I've decided I'm going to let go of my old notion, my old conviction that no matter how hard I try or how hard I work, the future will never be as good as the past. And I said, are you going to do it? He said, yes, I am. And I said, how? He said, because I'm going to wake up every morning and remind myself I no longer believe that. I'm letting go of it. And he did it, Susan. He did it, and it changed his entire life. He was an entrepreneur. His business had been failing. He rebuilt it. He had lost his wife, whom he adored, and maybe 10 years earlier. And because he was open to the possibilities of good stuff, and when you're open to it, it's more likely to happen to you. He met somebody, a wonderful woman. They're being married in the fall. He and I became email pals, and that whole attitude changed his whole life. He made a decision that he was not going to think one way. He was going to think another way. So we can, on any given day, decide, okay, what am I going to concentrate on today? What do I really want to believe?
So your belief system is what you're saying is probably the motivating force behind actually making changes in the moment. And you didn't mention that word in the moment, but let's talk about that because you seemingly have had conversations in your books about in the moment, doing things, changing one's attitude that I can succeed, and it has to be now. What did you learn from this man? I mean, where did this change in attitude, and how do you suggest that someone suddenly who has been around for quite some time, people like me who've been around for quite some time, how do we change our attitude?
It's one moment at a time. It's making a decision, which is different from trying. It's like somebody says, well, I'm going to try to stop smoking. It's deciding. Okay, what am I deciding? And that means that every morning you have to get up and decide that what you're going to take energy from. I love Michael J. Fox. He's a hero of mine. And I saw him interviewed not long ago, and he said this. He said, I have Parkinson's. It is what it is. Everything else I get to decide. And, I mean, he could he's made, the challenge that he has. Yes, he has Parkinson's. Is it curable? No. But he's made it a bigger reason to live well and make the contributions in terms of what he's doing to encourage other people that are just wonderful. And there are great stories of people to whom hard stuff happens. But then the question is, what do you make of it? And that's what you get to decide. I don't think I told you this, I had double bypass surgery about 5 years ago, out of the blue. The athlete, I'm the one who always ate the right stuff and worked out and everything, and I basically saved my own life because nobody believed that I could possibly have anything wrong with me, and that's another story. But it turned out, was it hard? Yeah. Was I angry at first? I was a little bit, because I thought, gee, why would that happen to me? Mm-hmm. But it turned out to be a really good thing, not a bad thing, because it turned out that what I can do for people, particularly other women, is help motivate them to take control of their lives and take control of their own health, including their heart health. And it just has had a huge, wonderful impact on my life. It's almost like, to be really corny, it's almost like that was supposed to happen to me so that I could, I'm a motivational person, so that I could motivate, in this case, women to live really well and take good care of themselves.
Well, you're talking about a topic that is really one that you see in the news and hear daily. How to empower people to take control of situations that they do have a choice to make, and that is eating, for example, the right food and walking away from a table of chocolate cake. Now, I'm just going to give you this example because I got to tell you, somebody brought me a chocolate cake the other day thinking that I was actually going to serve them dinner. I'm absolutely saddened by the fact that if I would have known that I was really supposed to serve them dinner, I would have welcomed that chocolate cake. But you know what? I just couldn't, I didn't plan on it. So we went out to eat, and that chocolate cake remained in my fridge. Well, you know what, Gail? I went to that chocolate cake 2 nights in a row. And in fact, I cut a piece of that cake, and I just couldn't. It was just so delectable. I took a second piece on the first night, and on the second night I was up to almost the third piece. Well, yesterday I decided, I made a cognizant choice to walk away from that chocolate cake. Now, the only thing I did, which is really sinful, is I brought it to a friend who's on a diet. Now, I must tell you, now it's her choice. You see, because she said to me, I think I did a good deed. Because she said to me, I am going to lose weight. I am going to actually care about my body. Now, we'll see what happens because I'm going to go visit her and see whether that chocolate cake's finished. So I think what I'm asking you is, we do make choices, and you are a person who wants to empower people. Define that word empower to me. How do you empower people to do the kinds of things that help them make the right choices for themselves?
It's interesting because you mentioned the Oprah show that I was on with my book, In My Wildest Dreams, and Oprah and I were walking through the audience, and we were asking people to answer that question, if anything were possible, what would you like to make happen? And one woman stood up and said, I'm going to write a book. And I said, wonderful. When are you going to write it? And she said, oh, well, I guess I'm just kind of waiting for the courage. And I said, oh, never wait for the courage. Courage isn't given. Courage comes with action. The minute you step forward, the minute you actually decide, your courage will be there. You won't have to wait for it. Courage comes with action. Anyway, she went ahead and actually developed that book and ultimately sold it because she made the decision that she was going to do it. So I think a lot of us are kind of waiting for the courage. We're waiting to feel less overwhelmed. We're waiting for things to settle down. You know, we're waiting for the children to be older. One woman I was coaching, she had a big idea, and she said, but I just have to wait for my son to get a little bit older. I said, okay, well, how old is he now? And she said, well, he's 30, but I still, So, I mean, there are all kinds of things that we're waiting for, and you can end up waiting a lifetime. So it really is. You talk about being in the moment. It really is now. It really is, and part of what we want to let go of is thinking that we have to wait for the energy, because energy is something you create around yourself. And I throw out 50 things. I start out the book saying that my philosophy comes straight from Michelangelo. When Michelangelo created that wonderful statue of David, word went out throughout Italy that this was his absolute greatest work. And some rich guy, a patron of the arts nearby, wrote him a note and said, can I come to see this David of yours? Because he thought, I'm sure it's terrific, but I'm like, gosh, it can't be that good. So Michelangelo wrote back and said, sure, come ahead. So this fellow arrives at Michelangelo's studio, and Michelangelo presented the statue of David to him, and this guy was completely overwhelmed by the beauty
that, clearly.
and perfection of that incredible statue. And finally, he was speechless. And finally, when he recovered himself, he said, I don't understand. How did you know to sculpt David? And Michelangelo said, oh, well, David was always there in the marble. I just took away everything that was not David. Well, that's my job as your coach, but it's also your job with yourself, clearing away. Maybe it's something you kind of have to do every day, editing out all the stuff that we buy into, all the negative assumptions, all the regrets, all the grudges, all the stuff, including all the physical stuff, like, you can clear out that drawer in the kitchen, by the way, and the stuff in the attic, and I could go on and on. But that's what gives us energy, clearing it away. It's like what the guy did who said he wasn't going to buy into that decision that, life was over for him. But he had to let it go, clear it away, edit it out every day. And we can do that. We're supposed to do that.
Is that being a risk taker?
Sure. Helen Keller said life is either a daring adventure or it is nothing. Now, that doesn't mean reckless, but taking a risk, standing for something, deciding what you're out for, and which is going to be perhaps going one direction instead of the other. There's always a risk of failure. All the greatest things, you think of the greatest inventions, the greatest companies, the most wonderful films you've seen, the greatest entertainers, the people who have really put themselves out there. In some cases, put themselves out there against all flags. That's a risk. And if you're, think about Cher. Every time she walks out on the stage, she could say, boy, I hope this isn't the time I mess up. But she doesn't. She thinks, this is going to be so good. And she puts herself out there, as many entertainers do. They just, their whole selves. They don't hold back. That's what it takes. That's actually where the fun is. That's really where the fun is.
So you're talking about the power of positive thinking, are you not?
Yep. Yeah, I am.
And that comes from, again, based upon what I'm hearing you say, an attitude that you had from a very early age, the values that your father and your mother gave you to be anybody you can be, whether you were a man or a woman. And that's also another important thing, empowering people, it sounds like, to be anything they want to be if they just have a very positive attitude. Let's talk about your job from being in top management at Avon a number of years ago. Did that experience translate into the advice that you now give your clients? The fact that you took a position and grew that position to really sell things. Avon had a kind of attitude. Let's talk about Avon for a moment, if you don't mind. I'd like to hear what you have to say about the influence that had on your writing your books and on your attitude today.
It was an absolutely wonderful, wonderful company. And the whole concept of the company was really enabling women to make their wildest dreams come true by using the opportunity that Avon provided them to build a business of their own. What could be better? That would be limited only by the size of their dreams, not by anything else, and to, create a life. And lots of women who created Avon businesses really created new lives for themselves. And so to be a part of a company with that kind of spirit was absolutely terrific, and I learned a great deal from it. It just was so much in sync anyway with kind of the attitude I'd been brought up with. But no matter what I did in that company, and usually I was head of global communications, advertising, public relations, etc., but always my job was motivating the sales organization because sometimes it's hard. It's hard to go out at what it was like at that point, knocking on doors of people whom you didn't know. It still is hard. That means calling up somebody that you don't know or emailing them or whatever, and saying, hey, what would you think of the product, whatever that product is you happen to be selling in your life, whatever offering you have. It takes courage to put yourself out there because they could say no. And lots of times they do. And that's okay. Hey, you remember Catherine Stockett wrote that wonderful book a couple of years ago, The Help?
Yes. That
became a runaway, millions and millions and millions and millions of books sold, film made out of it. She had, I think it was 65 rejections from publishers. Can you imagine? 65. There's like hardly any publishers left that didn't say no. Now, you know what? We're not interested in that book. But she just kept going. In fact, Katie Couric interviewed her and said, so, now that you've sold however many million books, what would you like to say to those publishers? And Catherine Stockett said, I would say thank you, because every one of those no's made me stronger, more determined. Every one of those no's made me go back and take another look, maybe refine things a little bit. And, I took heart from it. I have what I invite people to think about, 3 simple things. Faith, focus, fight. I think that, number one, you've got to have faith in the worth of your idea or your talent or yourself, even when no one else does. Second, I think you've got to be totally focused. You can't allow yourself to be distracted by your own doubts, like, am I really that good, or the doubts of other people. It would have been so easy for Catherine Stockett to have been distracted. And 3, fight. And I don't mean be argumentative or combative or obnoxious. I mean be feisty. Adopt an internal fighting spirit. I mean, how many times have we heard anything good is worth fighting for? So you have faith in it, you focus on it, you fight for it, and you assume the best. And boy, is that important, assuming the best. Every room you walk into, every day you get up, assume the best, because, and there's been studies done on this, on the whole, we do get what we expect. So if you expect the best, it's more likely to show up in your life in the form of good people, good ideas, good opportunities.
Well, this is a wonderful way to close, but I want you to give our audience one more piece of advice. And you're involved now in women taking control of their heart health. Mm-hmm. And this can't be a more important thing, because more people die of heart disease than any other disease in this world. And
yeah, but excuse me for interrupting. More women die from heart disease than any other disease. More women die from heart disease than all the cancers put together. Like 500,000 women die every year from heart disease, and most of them didn't have to. So I'm going to change those statistics.
There you go. This is a special person that we've been talking to, Gail Blanke, who's written a number of books. Gail, if people want to reach you and talk to you, just as that gentleman did and told you about changing his attitude and now having a wonderful life, how do they get in touch with Gail Blanke?
They can go to gailblanke.com, or they can go straight to throwout50things.com, F-I-F-T-Y, and I write something every week I call the Monday Morning Motivator, and you can sign up for it. Of course, it's for free, and it will drop into your inbox every Monday morning early, and it'll be, here's why this is going to be a good week for you. Here's one thing to think about that's going to make it an absolutely terrific week. So I'd love to send it to people who are listening. People seem to love it.
Well, I might be the one who you get the first one, the first message from on next Monday, so be prepared. My guest today was Gail Blanke, who is an author, best-selling author, who's got a lot of wonderful advice. She is now giving advice to people from all walks of life, and you might be the lucky one that she gives a special piece of advice to. So thank you, Gail Blanke, for being on V for Vitality.
Thanks so much, Susan. I loved it.
This show has been edited by Lisa Giles of IVR Productions, LLC.